few weeks ago, Jenny and I were hanging out with some friends, and we got onto the topic of first crushes, and I hadn't given mine much thought, but hearing them talking about their experiences made all my memories come rushing back to me. My first crush was a girl from middle school. Let's call her Sally. It was on the first day of class, and the teacher told everyone to go to the front to introduce themselves. And I remember when it was Sally's turn to go up, I couldn't stop looking at her. She went back to her seat, and then when it was my turn, I went up and started talking, and I kept looking out of the corner of my eye to see if maybe I was making a good first impression on her. But throughout my talk, she didn't look up at me even once. She was too busy talking with the girl sitting next to her. So I finished talking and I sat down at my desk a little defeated, but I still had some hope to maybe try and talk to her sometime during recess or something. So imagine you're in class and all you've heard the teacher say so far is names in Spanish. So you hear her ask for Carlos Martinez to step up to the front of the class, or you hear names like Maria or Antonio. And this keeps going until you hear the teacher say, "Would Taylor Johnson come up to the front of the class, please? Taylor Johnson." And everybody stops what they're doing because they want to see what the foreign kid looks like. So I turn around to see what this Taylor Johnson dude is all about. And it turns out he has a perfect smile, he's got cute little freckles on his cheeks, and most importantly, he's the only blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid in the entire class. And all the girls are staring at him as he makes his way up to the front of the class, totally checking him out. Every foreign kid was always instantly popular with the girls. And the most common type of foreign kids we'd get were military brats that were always messed up in some way or another. But the girls never seemed to notice. So he goes up to the front, and Sally is entranced with him. She's putty in Taylor Johnson's hands. And Taylor's introduction is super passionate. He talks about how his dad's a war hero in the United States, and he says his dad's his idol, and he's learned about honor and pride for his country because of him. And I'm sitting there at my desk pissed off at myself because I went up there and talked about dumb shit, like my dog and how much I like pizza, and this guy's up there talking about patriotism and making all the girls melt. So he's got all the girls' attention, and he ends his speech by saying that he doesn't know too much Spanish, but he's willing to try saying something for the class. And he says, "No hablo español, mucho gracias." And all the girls start cheering him on and clapping. And Sally turns to her friend and they both start gushing over how cute he is. And that's when I know that Taylor Johnson is going to be a big fucking problem. A couple of weeks go by and I'm in math class when the bell rings for lunch, but the teacher asks me to stay. I was always real shitty at math, so he wants to go over a quiz I did especially shitty on. And after that, I run to the cafeteria and my heart sinks when I see that Taylor and Sally are eating lunch together. The table they're sitting at is all girls except for Taylor, and all the girls are chanting out his name. Taylor gets up from their table and he starts doing military poses, and the girls are going nuts over it. He starts marching in place in front of them, and Sally's begging him to stop because he's making her choke on her soda. It's so funny. And he marches closer to her, and he starts to salute her over and over, and she's kicking her feet in the air over how hilarious he is. And then Taylor sits back down at the table, and they both hold hands, and that's when I feel my heart break for the first time in my life. I sit down at my table, and I quietly acknowledge to myself that I've lost my chance, that the dream is dead. So after that, Taylor and Sally had been dating for a week, which feels more like a month when you're in school. I'm at my locker when a kid comes up and he warns me that Taylor's been looking for me. He says someone mentioned to Taylor that I play baseball and now he wants to challenge me to a throwing competition. Because like I said, all of the foreign kids were fucked up in some way, and as me and every other guy in our class soon found out, this Taylor guy, he lived to crush other people's hopes and dreams. What he would do is, he'd find out what your thing was, whatever you were good at, and then he'd try his hardest to beat you at it. So if your thing was that you could stuff 2 Twinkies in your mouth at the same time, he'd go up to you and stuff 3 Twinkies in his mouth just to one-up you. And every time, whenever he'd beat you at whatever your thing was, he'd stand in front of you, he'd do a military salute, and then he'd say, "10 hut," before marching off. So this dude's telling me that I'm next on Taylor's 10 hut list, but I'm not worried. I know for a fact that Taylor can't beat me in a throwing competition because I've been playing baseball since I was 8. So I tell this kid, "Tell Taylor I'll be waiting under the mango tree if he's man enough to show up." So I'm at the mango tree practicing my form, and I see Taylor marching towards me, looking super intense. And we start walking around the tree looking for mangoes to throw, but there aren't any large ones we can use. So we agree on using baby mangoes instead, and we carefully measure and weigh each other's mango in our hand to make sure it's a fair contest. Taylor starts pumping himself up, he takes a running start, and then he flings his mango. We watch it go, and it ends up traveling pretty far. And Taylor starts marching in place and celebrating his throw, and now he's getting real fired up. He runs up to me and he starts shoving me and telling me to throw my mango. He starts to quote stuff from different war movies and calling me a pussy, and I'm starting to get real pissed off. I'm tired of all the girls liking his weird military shit. I'm tired of his baby blue eyes and his golden blonde hair. I'm fucking tired of Taylor fucking Johnson. So I push him off of me and I go into a blind rage. I squeeze the baby mango in my hand and I start screaming. I take 2 steps forward, I wind up, and I let that mango fly. And from the moment I let it go, I know that our little contest is over. The way my shoulder was pointing in the direction of my throw, the way my elbow was bent, the way my wrist flicked with just enough force before releasing the mango, the throw is absolutely perfect. I look at Taylor and he's stunned, looking at the mango soaring majestically in the air. So then I start getting pumped up, so I get up in his face and I start marching in place. I start saluting him over and over and I'm saying, 10 hot, 10 hot. But then Taylor sticks his arm out and he stops me and he has a horrified look on his face. I turn to where the mango's heading and then I see Sally way far off in the distance. So as Sally's coming up the stairs, Taylor starts running towards her and I stand there frozen, bracing myself for impact. She spots one of her friends and as she starts to wave over to her, the mango flies down and smashes right into her eyeball. The impact sends her staggering back and her books go flying. She covers her face with both of her hands and she drops to her knees. I get scared that Taylor's gonna go tell on me, so I run behind one of the classrooms and I duck down into some bushes. I overhear some kids in the classroom talking about a girl that just got hit in the face with a rock and that they're taking her to the hospital. So I stay in those bushes until the final bell rings to go home. A part of me worried Taylor's gonna tell her everything and she's gonna think I'm an asshole, but another part of me wanting to go up and tell her myself just to get rid of this guilt. The next day, I'm sitting in class and Sally walks in wearing a huge bandage over her eye, and I feel terrible. People start whispering, wondering who threw the rock at her. The teacher tells the class to quiet down, and she says that concerning what happened yesterday, Taylor Johnson has an announcement he'd like to make. And I feel the whole room start to spin, and I know I'm about to be ratted out. So Taylor goes to the front, and he says, "If there's one thing my dad's taught me, it's honesty." Immediately, I get flashes of my mom and dad's disappointed faces when they find out what I did. And Taylor says, "What happened to Sally wasn't an attack on her, it was an accident. Andy and I were having a throwing competition under the mango tree." I adjust myself in my seat, and I feel like I want to shit and throw up at the same time. And then Taylor says, "It wasn't a rock that hit her either, it was a baby mango. A baby mango thrown by me." And the class erupts into chattering and whispering, and I'm sitting there mind-fucked. And Taylor sits back down and people are telling him how brave he is for coming out with the truth. And some people are asking him how he managed to throw his mango that far. I'm relieved that he took the fall for me, but I'm also angry that my perfect throw, that thing of beauty, has now become his to brag about to other people. I'm glad my parents aren't going to find out about this, but I'm also jealous that he got to have a heartfelt moment that brought him and Sally closer together. So later that day during lunch, I'm at the cafeteria when I see Taylor marching over to my table, and I already know what's coming. He stops in front of me and straightens up, and Sally is looking at me with her one good eye from her table, but I'm surprised when I start to feel a weight being lifted from my shoulders. Because having Taylor 10-hut me in front of the girl I like would have destroyed me a week ago, but at this moment I felt calm and relaxed. I knew that I no longer felt anything for Sally, and I wasn't even mad at Taylor anymore. So Taylor's arm goes up, he salutes me, and he says, 10-hut. And here's a guy that could have been suspended or expelled for confessing to throwing the mango, or Sally could have ended their relationship. He put everything on the line for this one triumphant moment, and I felt it was only fair for me to give it to him. So I get up from my table, I straighten up, and I give him my best salute. And we stand in the cafeteria facing each other, both of us sharing a moment of mutual respect, surrounded by kids who don't have the slightest idea of what's going on. After the mango incident, Taylor went on to challenge other kids, but he kept his distance from me. And Sally's eye recovered, but she and Taylor didn't end up together for too long. He only stuck around for a couple more years before he told the class that he was moving back to the States. So on the last day of that school year, everyone was saying their goodbyes to him, and I went over to shake his hand. And he told me that I'd been his greatest challenger, and that I shouldn't be surprised if I hear from him again sometime down the road. It's been more than a decade and I haven't heard from him ever since, but I still have hope that someday I'll be checking my email or something and I'll get linked to a video series called Taylor Tells Stories. And I'll sit there at the computer watching the video and laughing to myself, watching Taylor Johnson trying to beat me at my own game for one last time.